hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. Tipping point. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott McKay coming to you live from Dallas. This is the tipping point on revolution.radio, the high octane, full throttle truth hammer raining a shitstorm down on the scumbag class of the world, the politicians, the central bankers, the Rothschild clan, royal families, all their cohorts, Vatican, Hollywood, douchebags, all of them, the whole gamut. That is the target here, as you know, for the last 5 years. We just gave up the ghost on putting up with the bullshit we've been fed unseasoned forever. And that's why we come at you with this kind of information with the tomahawk or the full throttle truth hammer. I can't find the tomahawk. It's not close. I got them laying around everywhere. I got throwing axes. People are sending me unbelievable shit you can only imagine. Once we got the tomahawk out, man, people were sending me their prototypes, hatchets, fireman's axe, throwing axes. So Bruce Lee would probably want to come and live here one day if I moved out. That's all I can tell you. But so it's good to have all you here tonight, folks. We have an explosive, I would say probably epic development in the world, which all of you know about. We had the roundtable, last minute roundtable on Saturday night with Nino and Jaco. Many of you, of course, have seen that and sent that all over the world. People are getting an understanding of what's happening here. But I'm going to say this. It's too early for any of us to tell what exactly is playing out here. I'll let you chew on that for a little bit. But I can tell you what's playing out that the whole world can see. The whole world, except the massive herd of lobotomized monkeys that are running around across the planet, especially in this country. I think Webster's dictionary defines them as Democrats. I think that's what it says, Democrat in the Daniel Webster. Maybe it's Daniel Webster dictionary says Democrat, and then it says lobotomized monkeys. That's what I see going ape shit over what happened, right? Just recently, they're saying, you shouldn't be blowing these boats up. You need to arrest these people. They should be arrested, not blown up and killed. All right. So we decided to bring one in, arrest them. What happens? They're flipping out. It's hysterical to watch. This is better than Saturday morning cartoons when I was like 7 years old. You know, Mighty Mouse and Underdog and all that shit we used to watch. The Roadrunner. We couldn't wait to get up on Saturday mornings for that. We couldn't get up in the morning to go to school, but we'd be up at 6:30 to watch Saturday morning cartoons. That's what every day is like today, watching this unfolding shit show from the liberal lunatic Tim Walz, Harris Biden left. And I'm telling you, it's epic. Let's take a quick look at what they're so pissed off about. This is what has them enraged. They're watching these poor people, these downtrodden and overburdened people in the country of Venezuela. And this is why they're so mad at him. They're so mad at Trump because this is what he did to those poor people. Let's take a look.
Estamos saliendo de una de las peores ratas de Venezuela.
La captura de Nicolás Maduro y su esposa. ¡Viva la libertad! ¡Viva Venezuela libre! ¡Viva Venezuela libre!
Now, let's contrast that with a Hollywood Democrat. Check out this dime store douchebag, Ethan Hawke. Watch this.
I'm a little in shock about that. You know, I was already upset about the Kennedy Center honor, and now we're bombing of some. You know, I've done enough Shakespeare plays to know that power corrupts. I mean, we're surrounded. History is littered with despots and selfish people and greedy people, and they make the rules for the kind people. And I keep wanting to say what a strange time we're living in, but then the great thing about being an actor is you get to do all these period movies. Every time period is strange.
Period movies.
You know?
Holy shit,
my mother calls it the battle between the mysterious force for good and the mysterious force for darkness.
I don't even know where to. No comment necessary. Let's go to another douchebag.
We will not take a lecture on decorum from a party that incited an insurrection. I appear to live rent-free in the minds of some of my Republican colleagues. I wish that they would spend even...
I'm a little in shock about that. You know, I was already upset about the Kennedy Center honor, and now we're...
We will not take a lecture on decorum from a party that incited an insurrection. I appear to live rent-free in the minds of some of my Republican colleagues. I wish that they would spend even a fraction of the time that they spend thinking about me, thinking about how to lower the costs for American families. I wish they would spend a fraction of the time that they spend thinking about me, figuring out how to make government actually work better, rather than making it work worse in order to prove that government can't work. They are obsessed with culture war issues. The Republican Party is obsessed with culture war issues. It is weird and it is bizarre. And the American people deserve serious legislators, serious elected officials who are focused on bringing people together to deliver real results for the American people, not to play games and not to engage in schoolyard taunts.
Folks, you couldn't write a better comedy. You couldn't write a better comedy. Republicans are weird and bizarre. Look at this. The only thing this ding-a-ling was missing was a fruit salad on his head, trying to pass himself off as a woman. I seen more sanity in West Hollywood on Gay Pride Day than this shit that I'm seeing from the left right now. It's truly remarkable. Anyways, I've been through so many of these videos today, Instagram or TikTok, listening to the endless line of horseshit from these creatures, whatever they are, from the left. It's crazy. And the young ones, they pop on to get a look. The whole podcast world and social media sent this whole medium of the digital warrior like into a sea of slimy little guppies running around biting each other. It's the stupidest thing. Now any knucklehead can turn on a camera and start talking into a camera, and it's going to social media, and they're protesting and saying or repeating the same taglines that the Democratic Liberal Party puts out in the media. They're all doing it too. And they're saying the stupidest shit because they have zero. First of all, if their education, if they graduated in the last 20 years, they know nothing. I mean, they know nothing. And the decades before that, those people who are coming out and saying this stupid shit, the simple fact is, folks, not even in my time were we taught accurate history, but we were taught enough history to know what makes sense and what doesn't. All these experts, like, your Joe Lunchbucket, Sally Sewing Needle, lower middle class or middle class America, lobotomized liberal, they don't know shit. But they think because they came into this era where all this stuff's changing, they're paying attention for 5 minutes, then they think they can put out an intelligent conversation on these issues. They know nothing. And I said this on the show the other night. I'll say it again. I know to a tiny degree, And I read cover to cover from 95 till 2015, 30 years, Wall Street Journal, editorials, USA Today. I went through multiple newspapers every day of my life reading shit because I had such a boring life. And it was my passion. So I said in 2000, when they unpinned or unpegged the peso in Venezuela from the US dollar, I said in 15 years, this is going to be a socialist country. It's going to be in the toilet. It'll be a third world country. It happened by 12 to 13 years later. So I do know what's going on there, or at least I did back then. This isn't brand new to me. But I'm going to read something that somebody put out here that's much smarter than me. And I'm going to, all you knucklehead Democrats out there who won't listen to this anyways, I'm going to put it up here so some of you that are teetering on the fence may get a little history here. Here's what Sergio Garcia put up on a Facebook post. It says this. By the way, got a great guest tonight. This is a guest you've never seen before. Nobody's ever seen him before on any channel. He's one of my higher level intel sources. He's a second party source to me from an extremely high level source who has been around the spec ops community for probably 50 plus years of his life, still active. Anyways, Robert will be here in a few minutes, but we're going to rip through this here. Trump isn't pirating ships. He must seize and sell 300 Venezuelan oil tankers to satisfy an international court judgment owed to U.S. companies. What most of you lobotomized monkeys don't know, they nationalized Hugo Chavez. First, they stole the election, so Chavez was the socialist, democratic socialist destroyer of Venezuela. More oil reserves in the world, nowhere but Venezuela. A massively wealthy country, gold, silver, resources beyond imagination. They are an economic powerhouse. People pissed at China and Russia coming in, and the U.S. shouldn't be there. China rolled out 847 tons of silver, took it right out of there. And I forget what Russia rolled out with, gold, whatever. Anyways, so they're down there, they're raping and pillaging the country, or maybe there's something else going on. Maybe there's a Xi and a Putin working together with Trump, and they're stripping out resources so the Khazarian mobsters can't get it. Anyways, so you don't remember when Chavez did that. I do. I remember when he's taken all the money, all the infrastructure, and all the revenue coming in from oil that was built by U.S. companies and funded by U.S. taxpayers through buying stock. So a lot of people are reacting emotionally to the idea of oil tankers being seized, but most of the outrage comes from not understanding what's actually being discussed. So let's slow this down and explain it clearly. Sorry, I got like a lozenge in my throat. 6 hours sleep over two or 3 days, and then an airplane flight. I was asking for trouble. So here it comes. So let's slow this down, explain it clearly, legally, and step by step. This is not war. This is not piracy. This is judgment enforcement. The same principle used every day when courts seize bank accounts, property, aircraft, or cargo from someone who lost in court and refuses to pay. Number one, what Venezuela did, the part that always gets skipped in the 2000s under Hugo Chavez, Venezuela seized oil projects owned by foreign companies, including major U.S. firms such as ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips. Look, I'm not fans of these guys either, but I'm fans of the stockholder, though. This wasn't a policy disagreement. It was expropriation. Contracts were broken. Assets were taken or stolen. Compensation that had been agreed to was not paid. That is not controversial. It's historical fact. Number two, what the courts decided. Those U.S. companies didn't complain on social media. They went to international arbitration and U.S. courts, the proper legal venues. They won. The rulings were final. Number two, binding. Number three, enforceable. Venezuela lost and was ordered to pay tens of billions of dollars in damages. Number three, the real problem. Venezuela refused to pay. Here's a key point most critics ignore. Most lobotomized monkeys ignore. Venezuela refused to pay with the court judgments. In any legal system, domestic or international, when a party, one, loses in court, two, owes a judgment, three, refuses to pay, the law allows creditors to seize commercial assets belonging to the debtor outside its borders to satisfy judgment. This is called judgment enforcement. Countries do not get a free pass simply because they are countries. Next, number four. Why oil tankers even enter the conversation? Venezuela's primary commercial asset is oil. Oil moves on oil tankers. Those tankers, one, carry state-owned Venezuelan oil, are commercial property, not military or diplomatic assets, and can be lawfully seized by court order in cooperating jurisdictions. There's one thing you learn about Trump and the military and this operation. It's been going on for a long time. They do not violate constitutional or international law. They made it very clear. Everybody's pissed. Why is this taking so long? Why is it taking so long? Everything is being done by the book, and I mean every aspect of it, so it can never be historically challenged or refuted what really happened here. And you don't like the laws that these scumbags have made us live under, or back themselves into a safe zone and had these walls of the laws and legal system put up to shield them. Of course, we don't like it, but guess what? The assets that are working on behalf of us are using their system, using their criminal court system and everything else against them, using their own laws against them. So anyways, there's no different in principle from seizing a bank account, a plane, a shipment of goods. Calling this piracy is legally incorrect. Piracy is theft without lawful authority. This is a court-ordered seizure to collect a debt already ruled on. Number 5, the math everyone avoids. Let's use conservative, realistic numbers so no one can claim exaggeration. Estimated unpaid court judgments, $35 billion. Oil price used to be $62 a barrel. Typical large oil tanker carries 2 million barrels. The value of one full oil tanker, gross value, is $124 million. The net value after real estate court sale discounts, $115 million. Now do the math. 35 billion divided by 115 million seizing a tanker requires the seizure of 300 tankers. That's where the number comes from. Not one tanker, not 10, about 300. One tanker covers only about 1/3 of 1% of what Venezuela owes. Number 6, what this means and what it does not mean. This does not mean tankers are being randomly grabbed. This is a military action. The goal is punishment. It does mean courts have already ruled debt legally exists. Enforcement is the only option left when the payment is refused. When Donald Trump talks about seizing oil shipments, he's not inventing a new power. He's talking about using existing legal authority to enforce judgments Venezuela already lost. Well, the reality is the lobotomized President Shrub Bush, yes, who I worked on 2 campaigns for, he didn't do it. He didn't get the job done like he should have. You didn't see Mike's boyfriend, Hussein. You didn't see Hussein do it. He couldn't get off his knees enough to get anything done. And so therefore, the next person up could have been Joe Biden, right? Why didn't Trump do it back then? You'll say, the guy's starting to unwind this unbelievable octopus wrapped planet. You can't do everything all at once. Everything is being done in sequence for a specific geopolitical and safety reason. That's why we're in this time handling this situation. Anyway, so Donald Trump, okay, just lost. Legal authority. In plain English, that's what it means. You took property, you lost in court, you refused to pay. So your commercial assets are seized and sold until the debt is satisfied. Why don't you see hundreds of tankers seized? Because enforcement is legally narrow, jurisdiction dependent, deliberately targeted. Venezuela also structured its exports to avoid enforceable ports, use intermediaries, which they've been doing, break shipments into smaller pieces. So tanker seizures are rare, careful, and strategic, not mass roundups. Tankers are leverage, not a magic wand. The bottom line, Venezuela seized U.S. assets nearly 25 years ago. They lost in international court. They refused to pay. They owe $35 billion debt. A tanker's worth $115 million net. It would take 300 tankers to make the judgment whole. This is law enforcement. It is not piracy. This is accounting. It's not aggression. This is what happens when court rulings are ignored. People arguing, this sounds extreme, are missing the most important fact. The court already decided this. Nobody wanted to enforce it, including scumbag Republicans in D.C. who could have been pushing on this, but they didn't, primarily because they're scumbags. Once that happens, enforcement isn't optional. It's inevitable. Everything else flows from that reality, folks. That is why Trump is doing exactly what he's doing. I'm going to, give me a sec here. I threw something. Okay, mic closer. I'm not sure I'm going to bring this up for you folks right now. I'm not sure it fits into the narrative for a reason yet, but I think it will here sometime tonight and when Robert comes on. So, other point I'm going to make, very important point. We've now been made whole here at Fort Patriot Street Fighter. Come on up. Say hello here. Say hello to everybody. Look who's back. Look who's back in the house. Come here. Come on. Look who's back in the house. Up. Come here. Up. Jump. Give you a look at my new boy. Come on. Up. Jump. So here he is. He's back. He's brand new. Look at my boy. Look at him. How good he looks. He's all healed. We took him back today. For a blood test. And it came back. Everything's completely clear. Liver numbers are clear in line. Liver's almost there. And he's going to live to scare a whole lot more squirrels outside, aren't you, buddy? Good to have you back. So we got Tomahawk is back in the house. Big news. And it's exhausted me for 2 days. Kind of liked him for a day when he wasn't feeling well, so I got a rest. What else is going on in the world here? A few things I had put up earlier. We'll save that for another show. By the way, I did mention that we'd have John Guindolo on tonight. John, counterterrorism, FBI, 20 years. I had him on quite a while ago. And it is all about the Muslim Brotherhood invasion into this country. And so he couldn't make it today. We decided we were going to continue on with this narrative. But here's something that I find interesting. I've kept this up since the last show, and we're going into this. And it's going to be pretty aggressive, offensive once we get underway with this on the Muslim Brotherhood here in the States. We said this to myself. So Amy Mack puts this on X, and it's talking about the Islamic doctrine. She says this: it's not Somali fraud. By the way, you saw Tim Waltz. Again, we could have fun with this all day. These freaks. Tim Waltz is stepping down. Why? Because his ass is in trouble. All these people, part of the political machine that is now being uncovered. I think they've known this forever, folks. They've just been waiting. It's all timing, sequential exposure on all this shit. Remember this from our Q drops: drip, 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 flood. And when it comes, it's going to be a massive flood. So she says it's not Somali fraud. It's Islamic doctrine. This is why it's so dangerous, and we're going to be addressing this on an ongoing basis. Everyone today is hyper-focused on the massive Somali fraud scandal in Minnesota while conveniently leaving out Islam. The fraud is undeniable. What's being deliberately avoided is the motive. It remains politically safer to talk about ethnicity or immigration than to name the Islamic scripture that strictly observant religious Muslims use to justify extracting money from non-Muslims. This is not just greed. Muhammad explicitly established that people of other religions must pay a poll tax to Muslims called jizya, imposed as a marker of inferiority and submission. This is not interpretation. It's plainly stated in the Quran 9:9-9. And the quote is, "Fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." Giza was a humiliating tribute tax placed on conquered non-Muslims, a permanent condition of subjugation under Islamic rule. And in Western welfare states today, many Muslims live on public benefits. Among strictly observant adherents, those payments from non-Muslim, who they call kufr, non-Muslim governments are often viewed as the modern equivalent of jizya, money infidels are obligated to hand over to Muslims. No reciprocity, no moral issue with fraud, no obligation to work. This is part, and it's not a religion, it is a civilization, folks. It's a political ideology, it's a civilization. It is not a religion. I don't care what they say, what they call it. It says, the doctrine provides the justification non-Muslims in submission must pay. Their wealth is not fully protected. In lands outside of Sharia rule, traditional Islamic rulings permit taking what is considered owed. This is why the same pattern erupts again and again and again in observant Muslim migrant communities across America and Europe. Astronomical welfare dependence, organized fraud networks, and billions drained, all rationalized through religious doctrine that turns taxpayers into tribute payers. Media and politicians obsess over the stolen billions but scream Islamophobia the moment anyone quotes the verse or names the ideology. They refuse to acknowledge the scripture that casts every non-Muslim taxpayer as a dhimmi obligated to fund, I don't know what that means, fund Muslims. To the truly adherent, your taxes are jizya, enforce submission through the wallet. Enough invasion, quote the scripture, expose the doctrine. America is not Dar al-Islam. We do not pay jizya. Look at the illegal Islamic invaders in the UK, laugh at their host nation. The immigrant here using his smartphone to show his friends back in Somewhereistan all the free money he's getting from British taxpayers. He's holding it up and he's holding up all this wad of money like a cards, and he's showing his friends on FaceTime, look at all the free money I get here in the UK. I'm sure he'll be filming his free 4-star hotel room, free food, free clothing, free illegal aid, free healthcare, etc., which will encourage more of his fellow freeloaders to invade the country. That's a big issue we've got to rectify in our time. I'm going to make sure we have our guest coming just because. Okay, good. I feel like being in the bullpen waiting for a second. Shit, I shouldn't have looked at that rabbit because I had a point to make and I forgot it. What did I see up here? Well, bottom line is, as you know, we've got a major problem here. And there's a lot of things going on in the world, but I personally think the gravest threat outside of the internal traitors in this country is the Muslim Brotherhood or the civilization of Islam. Like I said, I never thought, especially after being labeled an anti-Semite by Alan Dershowitz and Raphael Madcow, you think I'd be a little tepid to wade into the waters of something they call religion Islam. But I thought to myself, you know what? Why am I here? What am I going to do? Sit back and not say something because I'm going to be attacked or labeled something else, an Islamophobe? Once again, none of these, anybody in a debate who has to resort to an insult or calling a name in a debate has already lost. Because if they have the intellectual capacity to state their position in a coherent way and are able to influence your thinking to the same opinion or away from an opinion you hold as oppositional to move you in that direction, that's using intellect. That's using logic. It's using reason. It's using facts, empirical data, historical data. It's called contemplating all of the aspects of decision-making into one component to make the most logical and likeliest right decision. Unfortunately, on the other side, it just doesn't seem to happen. There's nothing logical about anything that these people do or what they support. It makes no sense whatsoever. So And I thought about this extensively since I was asked to be in this documentary. Chris Brigard is now directing, producing, writing, and John Gwendol will be part of that as well. As soon as he said about this problem, it's major, and we have it. It's going to be the greatest danger to this country because they want to come in and outbreed us and then outvote us ballots, and then now they got the laws passed and they can use our Constitution, our virtues against us. That's what they do. They use our virtues against us, right? And so that's why I decided back in 2020, when I was blowing the gasket in January, starting this radio show, I was going to use the language that I use when nobody's around, when I get seriously pissed. I am going to not allow anybody to use the semantics of language against me, use any of that, my virtues against me. A very, kind person that speaks very, in my opinion, very decently and respectfully. However, it's wartime. That shit doesn't work in war. It takes ruthless, aggressive actions to overcome an enemy and win when it's a life and death situation. So for me, with all the metal in my body, I can't outrun or beat up a Girl Scout. So I'm not going to be very effective there. That's why I got to carry a tomahawk, have tomahawk, and a weapon. But the reality is, if we worry about what people are going to say about us, what they think about what we're doing, what we're saying, we lose this country. And that's what I told my mother in 2008, that I saw that vision in my head that one day, because of where we were going to lose this nation. And I told her, she's the only person I ever said it to until I admitted it here, when she asked me a bunch of pressuring questions. And I told her that answer. And part of the answer was, something's been telling me for a very long time, the country's going to be pushed to the brink. And when it is, I'm going to have to stand up, rally a battle cry in this nation, get it on its feet to fight, or we're going to lose the whole thing. And that's when I said, I know that you probably think your son's crazy, but that's the only answer I've gotten. She waited about 10 seconds, got really quiet. And then she said, I don't think you're crazy. She says, Scotty, I've known since you were a little boy that you were different. And she stopped right there. And I'm thinking, well, shit, what exactly does that mean? She never followed up to define it, so I left it there. But the simple fact is, that's why when I decided to come out into the open then and rain a shitstorm down on anybody and everybody, including the most evil, powerful people in DC by name, call them names, what they are, scumbags, smoke them out, that's going to apply to everybody on earth. The Muslim Brotherhood is a great threat to civilization in general. Look at every single country that's dominated by these radical Muslims. Look at them. They're absolute shitholes. Shitholes. All of them. They're shitholes. They contribute nothing to the world except destruction, theft, and conquest. You have first world countries that are Muslim, like Turkey. Although Erdogan, the president, is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, backing them, the country wasn't built by Erdogan. It was actually damaged by Erdogan. The economy's gotten its ass crushed since he came to power. But it's not a country where that radical fundamentalism is dominating in the culture. That's why they have a relatively very modern culture. And there's other Muslim countries, same way. But this fundamentalist bullshit, all these countries are shitholes. So it's interesting. They want to come to America for the free money, the welfare, free healthcare, all the shit you people pay for that you can't even get for yourself. Truly. They come here to get all this free shit, and then they're trying to turn this country into the shithole it came from. This is what baffles me. And I couldn't understand how these people could be so stupid. I'm like, were they born Democrats in those countries? And I thought to myself, I think when it came out about the Somalians, the average IQ of a Somalian is 80. I don't know what that means. I think the average IQ of you, all of you sitting here, is about 100. 80 is a massive jump, or a massive drop off, actually, because of all the inbreeding. And I know I shouldn't sound like this, but I mean, kind of look at some of these people. You're like, are they from this solar system? I mean, what is that? I mean, what? That's a human? I know you know what I'm talking about. I've seen it. I'm like, what? WTF? So that's what we've imported. I remember in 2000, roughly, I guess more is like 96. Yeah, 96. Moved to Phoenix at the time. Girl I was dating at the time from India, first generation here. Parents, great people. Father was a doctor. She had an uncle in India, a thermonuclear physicist, and he was trying to immigrate here for obvious opportunities in nuclear physics or whatever. But he couldn't get here. I had his conversation. He was here visiting, had a conversation. And I was baffled then. It wasn't quite to the degree it is today at all. But I'm like, how can you be a thermonuclear physicist and you cannot get a visa or anything to come to the States or even, a green card or anything? But the southern border is wide open, bringing in all the people that contribute nothing to this country, nothing to society, and they're crushing the budget. On top of that, they're bringing their language. And look, I have no problem with people come here and work hard, but I do when these people are running around with their nation's flags throughout the streets of America. Get the fuck out. That's where I am. Get out. If you come here and you want to live in the soil that was built on the backs of my ancestors, robbed from the first evolution ancestors, built on the backs of our ancestors, and you want to get out of the shithole your country you come in, then you want to be out in Los Angeles, running around the Mexican flag. ICE, Tom Homan, pick them all up, ship their asses back to the nation where the flag. I don't care if they come from that country. If they're flying that flag, they must love that flag more. Send their asses out of this country where they belong. We have got to put an end to this bullshit. We as a people population have to stop accepting this bullshit. If we don't, do I believe we're going to win this overall? Yeah. But do I believe there's going to be more casualties until we do? Yeah. If we want to help, we have to ourselves use our voices, stop this bullshit that's happening with these illegals coming here and running around promoting their flag and their culture. If you want the culture, GTFU, get on a donkey, a bird, a plane, I don't care, get out of the country. I'm tired of watching our country being shit on everywhere by all these people who we do not need. We don't need these people in this country. We don't need them. Don't give me the BS about they're picking our strawberries and all that bullshit. If you're going to bring that to me, you don't understand economics. You have no clue, no background on how an economy works. And all the excuses you guys come up with is simply repeating the same parrot diatribe of the programmers on CNN, MSNBC. You guys, if you had to sit down and explain what you're saying, they're saying this stupid shit. If you had to explain it, let's say in front of an audience, you'd expose yourself for the buffoon that you are because you don't know shit. You can only repeat what you've seen them say or what you program. But if you have to use your brain and you have to dissect it and you have to break it down so it's understandable to the average person, and you could persuade them, influence them to your opinion, that's fair. But you can't because you don't have the knowledge. You don't have the background. You likely don't have the intellect either. Unfortunately, I know I'm sounding condescending. That's because I am condescending toward that bullshit and those kind of people. Anyways, there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot more coming. We got our guest on tonight. I could hear his voice. So I am going to introduce you to a gentleman who is become a very good friend of mine. I actually met him through this Patriot Street Fighter movement. And I've talked about two intel sources I have that are secondhand information, but secondhand means it's coming directly from the source itself, and the information is given over to me. Most of you know who Overwatch is out of Australia, high-level SAS operator, magistrate, highly educated, part of the high-level bloodline families fighting for the good side. Another one is a gentleman you're going to see here in a minute. I'm just going to refer him as Robert because we're keeping some kind of anonymity here. But I'm going to bring him in as far as the introduction and just ask a little bit about his background, because I don't think that'll tell you a lot about who Robert is, what he does, and then you'll learn that along this course of conversation, and that way he can disclose about him what he feels comfortable disclosing. Robert, Bobby, bro, good to have you on. First time on Patriot Street Fighter. I think maybe first time on any podcast, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if we had that discussion before.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. We've talked about this a lot. And coming on your show. And I said, well, Scott, whenever you feel like I have some value to add And I'm happy to go into my background, like you said, for your listeners, because that's what I am. I'm just part of the audience, like everyone else in the world, trying to figure out what in the hell is going on. How are we making progress against this, ultimate enemy we face? It's called by many names: the deep state, cabal, Khazarian mafia, the fiat banker elite, all those, the bloodline families. We're all right there. And so my stories, how did I get into this? Well, you've been in this fight for over 20 years, right, Scott?
35.
Yeah, long time. So my first foray getting information from a guy who's become a good friend and mentor of mine, highly involved. He's with the U.S. military, he's with our Navy. In 2008, I met him, and he would just sprinkle to me little drops about this nefarious activity going on in the world that Navy would have to monitor and eventually, intervene. And it was trafficking and the illicit commodities trafficked, which are the guns, the drugs. And
Hold on 1 second. We got somebody's voice in the background. I don't know what that is, but let's try to mute that out. Go ahead, Robert.
yeah. So when he first started to tell me about, well, here's what's really going on in the world, here's how the world is controlled, and these corrupt intelligence agencies or elements within them, and these corrupt European royal banking elite, they control money flow, and the three most lucrative commodities are the drugs, the weapons, and the children that are trafficked. And I had a very visceral reaction to all that. It was astounding. And when you very pragmatically just shared with me the numbers when it came to the latter. And he said, at any time, there are 8 million children in the world that are trafficked. And primarily the ones that are in the United States come from South America. Colombia is the number one country, although there are many that also come from within the United States. And you start to look at what states have the most kidnappings in the states. So what's being done about this? He said, well, we are going to have, remember, 2008, a cleansing of the military, because there's a lot of people that are complicit and involved. He says,
They're what? A lot of the military are complicit in child trafficking and sex trafficking. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he says, this could not occur. None of this could occur without the Navy being aware of it. And remember, what's one of the things Obama did during his tenure? He eliminated top level military.
235 of the top brass in the military he fired.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. And quietly, what occurred from 2018 until now, I would get articles from the boss that would just slowly display the number of different high-level military commanders getting changed out. People resigning, people leaving, and new commanders being appointed. None of this making the mainstream news. Mm-hmm. But in 2018, I finally said, couldn't you, with your rank, commission me and go do something? I had a business at the time that wasn't doing well. I'm glad he told me to stick with it because it all worked out. And he said, no, I just can't unilaterally do any kind of commissioning. But since you're interested in learning, because I expressed interest in being trained, he gave me a list of books to read. The first list was 14 books. And I've heard a lot of the material that's inside these books covered by you on your show. And first of all, he said, you need to understand how semantic deception is used against us. So get Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Understand the words person, corporation. Understand the maritime law that we're under, and we're all just chattel property under the crown. That was the first book, to understand the terms. But the most important one, he said, well, if you just want to get a start in the 20th century, to figure out where we are, there's a book by Jim Marrs, and it's called The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And you would think the propaganda machine that has led us all to believe the U.S. and the Allies won the Second World War. Well, not quite. Mm-hmm. Operation Paperclip brought thousands of Nazis to the United States, changed our intelligence organizations, which is what the Dulles brothers did, with the OSS becoming the CIA. And that long list of names that Jim Marrs gave in great detail includes the Scherfs. We call them the Bushes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I've heard Sheila Holm cover on podcasts where she talks about these people should have never been president. Bush 1, Bush 2. Bush 1 was probably given the presidency because of all the nefarious stuff he helped facilitate and organize. And here we are with a counter that what I understand from the boss is there was a group under Eisenhower, and it was Eisenhower, Bradley, Patton, MacArthur, All of them either killed or marginalized. Patton was killed. MacArthur was marginalized by Truman, basically fired. Mm-hmm. And the story behind that is, because MacArthur realized that when the CIA embedded intelligence agents with his unit, just like the movie Hunt for Red October, you had the political commissar on the ship, right? Well, MacArthur was told to share information through his CIA liaison with Washington. And he realized that when he started doing that, every time he'd make a move, there was a counter. So he decided not to share information for a raid he had planned at the port of Incheon, where the intelligence gathered a massive amount of weapons, ammunition were being shipped in, and that was very successful. And afterwards, Truman was so upset, why didn't you share this with your liaison? He said, well, there must have been a leak, and I had to move. And of course, he called him back and fired MacArthur. But that's where I gathered that there was a counter put in place. And this is a decades-long plan that we're seeing come to fruition right now. And, why are we talking, you and I? Well, because on January 6th, January 3rd, a major move was made. And then, I've seen you on you did a really great one with Nino and Jaco. Jaco's talked about it. There's been information getting out there. And I'm not anyone with deeply embedded information that's secret. Everything I share, I'm permitted to share. I'm speculating like a lot of people and just watching the maneuvers being made, hoping that we're all headed in the right direction. So, of course, I wanted to hear from the boss. What does he have to say? Was this a staged operation?
Can I read this? Go ahead. What perpetuated me to pick up your phone like, hey, brother, we got to talk. Because I asked if Maduro is working for the White Hats. Here's what you come back with. Because after the show I did with Nino and Jaco, I saw SG's post. I'm like, whoa, what? So here's your answer. And this is why I had to bring Robert on, folks. It says, well, it was staged. That's why it's so easy. It was so easy. I'll see here if he clarifies that Maduro is on board, then comes back from the boss. Quote, I've been telling people that VZ, Venezuela, has been a target of Israel for years. Aside from the slip by retired General Keane in 2009, General Keane made a comment about Venezuela and said it'll be good for the Israelis. And then Israel, and then I mean Venezuela. So it's a Freudian slip there. It said, the president of Israel, Ehud Olmert, at the time says Venezuela and Iran are the only two countries spreading anti-Semitism. Now, he admits that there are secret plans for Venezuela that they can't say on camera. Then Trump, as their agent, does the job for them. I'm not sure how to interpret that particular comment, but before I go any further, how do you see that particular comment that he makes? He admits because this is a quote, and I thought it was his words to you. He admits there are secret plans for Venezuela that they can't say on camera. Then Trump, as their agent, does the job for them. What does that mean?
Well, or is that how it appears? Because I think up until the very end, where, like it's been said in two posts, you have to save Israel for last. Up until the very end, there has to be a certain path that is walked. Mm-hmm. And of course, there is the perception that, okay, could this benefit Israel? Managed or have at least three key nations: the Russia, the United States, and China. Mm-hmm. And what's not on that list? What's not on that list for those who are going to control, maybe not necessarily dictatorially, but those who are going to influence the world, let's just say, as we move out of this fiat control, because that's what it comes down to. Because the other side of that coin, when sometimes if you have, say, an intelligence officer who has to go through his own decision tree, what does this action tell me? Maybe doesn't know everything, because you've heard before and you've said before, there are very few people that know this entire plan that is probably going to be decades long to execute to displace whatever you want to call them, the deep state cabal, and certainly it's rooted in the City of London and the fiat currency that they control. Mm-hmm. And what do you need to back a new currency? You need assets. So I sent you the messages also from the boss, him saying the U.S. was just late to the game. The U.S. and London, LBMA and COMEX have been playing the paper game in the metals-backed arena for a long time. They wanted to take out the United States too, leave the United States hanging with all this debt on worthless fiat currency with nothing to back it and resurrect the nation. I certainly don't see that happening. But China and Russia, according to the boss, they've already gotten each 4,200 tons of silver out of the Orinoco belt in Venezuela. The U.S. got nearly 850 tons.
So is that how much the U.S. took out of there?
Well, allegedly,
okay.
It was a large operation, and the removal of the metal occurred before the Maduro, because the Maduro thing was not just a couple helicopters that made it through.
Right.
You know, you had to protect against the net of everything else that could happen. He said, you have 2 large aircraft carriers loaded with Chinooks. You can bet that the protective layer around the actual operation that took place to either capture or extract, whatever it is, to get Maduro. But this was well planned and executed, and highly protected by military assets off of the carriers.
Well, I'm going to read a bit more of what you said here for the context. You have here, the boss is saying, knowledge of history and events is important to predict next steps. Planning from 2019 to 2025, Venezuela was guided into socialism/communism ideology in order to kill the Maduro regime, stand versus Israel, create a believable narrative, and kill their stand with Russia and Iran, and warning to any other country that dare stand versus the Jews, as he says. It is so clear. Problem is that both Russia and China also took their pieces, knowing what was planned for Venezuela. Then you say here, based on what Caesar said yesterday and now today, I'm not sure if we did this to benefit Israel or not. My gut tells me no. Perhaps it seems like that of today. It seems like it today, but it's not. Maybe he needs to take down the fake fiat banks before Israel falls. And that's why I threw up here when you were talking. I've been talking about this for months and months, and I forget who sent it to me today, but I've looked for it on the drops and I haven't been able to find it. But this is the only time it's ever been mentioned. We are saving Israel for last, very specific reason, not mentioned a single time here. So going further in a dialogue here from him, the boss says, it is a known fact that the CIA is the largest private bank in the world that operates without regulations that launders through the big banks. Who else discloses or has disclosed exposed facts that got them smoked? Muammar Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Manuel Noriega, Mohammed Mossadegh, that's Iran, and Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala, etc. There's a long list of that. And then let's see it. And then I'm going to check out this Rumble. I think I did watch this. You know what? I did not watch that panic that you were mentioning in that particular video, but I'm going to comment on it anyways. And you said, damn, this is such a good explanation of what's going on. Trump did not sell out to Israel. I have long tried to explain the New World Order players, and here the Rothschilds have demonstrated that they are terrified. Susan Kokinda discusses Donald Trump's national security strategy and challenged the traditional British influence over U.S. foreign policy, causing panic among British elites. She highlights a British House of Lords recent session that just quietly occurred, where Lord Lancaster discussed the NSS, which is Trump's national security strategy, noting Congress' recent National Defense Authorization Act added $8 billion to European defense and maintain 76,000 troops in Europe, suggesting a strategy to outlast President Trump. Kokinda believes Trump's meetings with Zelensky and Netanyahu were strategic, not sellouts, aligning with the NSS's goals of ending perpetual wars and repositioning U.S. relationships in the Middle East and Ukraine. Quote, this is from the boss, President Trump is taking countries run by not-so-nice people, like Turkey, like Syria, like Israel, and moving them off of Britain's geopolitical chessboard and into the world dominated by Trump's America First policies of sovereignty. This is a grand strategy. For the first time since 1945, the United States is acting like a sovereign nation, not as a queen acting as the empire's chessboard. And Trump is knocking the chess pieces off of their board one by one. He is replacing permanent war with bilateral business. And let me see. I'm going to say, I'm going to pull back on that right there. Or maybe I should read this one here. One last one here for you. And we'll comment. In fact, let's comment on all that. Then I'll go to the Michael Aquino in the Presidio.
Well, you asked, how is this seen? Because what I don't want to do is be anyone, and I don't have an X account. I don't have my own podcast channel. But of course, I'm on X and I'm following the information. And people are so rapid to jump to, Trump did this for the Khazarians. Trump did this for the banking elite. No, it doesn't appear that way to me. My personal opinion, and that was the first reaction, from the boss, where he said, well, look at it this way. There are going to be asset-backed currencies. And look at the list of nations that I gave him. I said, well, it appears to me that it's China, Russia, and the United States working together. And he says, aha. He says, they already got their piece. They already got their silver. And there's plenty of other resources too. Second largest oil resources in the world. Venezuela. And what wasn't on that list, the three nations, were any of the European countries typically run by the royals. None of the MI6s, it's the Dutch and the British. And there's a lot of actually French control too, because we're going to see it's not just Venezuela. What is next? There's resources in Colombia, Guyana, Suriname. So there's all kind of happenings there. And another issue too is, okay, if we're going against this globalist bankster Khazarian mafia cabal that uses its fiat currency and with impunity because of their banks are engaged in this illegal and horrible elements of trafficking. Well, if you wanted to cast a net and control which direction trafficking is going to go, particularly in this Western hemisphere from South America, plenty of U.S. Navy assets in the Caribbean to watch over all of that and interdict. So some of them, just like you've probably read the analogy of how do you capture a bunch of boars in the wild? You give them a path and you slowly build a fence around them. Well, there's quite a fence right now. So back to, did Trump do this for Israel or not? I personally don't think so. And I think as someone involved in intelligence, the boss is going to say, well, I could look at it this way or I could look at it this other way. And but here's what's happening right now, and we all did as part of the audience, because one of the things that you just said, and you've had Kirk Elliott on the show, is like, well, what do? I don't know what's going on with all of this information. I don't know what's going to happen to the U.S. economy, and we are unified, the boss and me and you, in our approach for acquiring physical silver. Remember, 847 million ounces, okay, taken from Venezuela. And people look at that as theft. Well, how many oil companies did Venezuela nationalize and take away from the United States? What do you get when a country has committed a major act of war against you, like with the Dominion voting machines based out of Venezuela, Smartmatic, City of London? You get reparations. So were deals made? I think so. So that you have an intelligence operation run by Cuba, the Brits involved, and then the U.S. comes along and says, well, this is the deal we're going to make. They're probably going to turn around Venezuela completely, from starving people in the streets to becoming very wealthy again. And whether you call it reparations, restitution, or setting up the country, because whether or not we are allied with, say, Russia and China, or that's the way the world is headed, where, okay, there's going to be these three dominant power players. The U.S. was behind. The U.S. was behind in its acquisition of resources, and not so. Because one of the other things the boss pointed out to me is, Secretary of State under Trump's first term, Rex Tillerson, he's with Chevron.
Pedophile.
But he said, watch Chevron. Because when everyone else, all the other oil companies cleared out of Venezuela, Tillerson stayed, maintained relationships, and stayed. So watch the redevelopment of all that. And the other thing that is interesting, too, is the type of crude that's dominant in Venezuela. It's not like it is out of Saudi Arabia, light sweet crude that doesn't take a whole lot of refining to produce finished product. This is heavy.
Heavy takes a lot of work and a lot of money to clean that stuff. We could have taken in many other places. We just wanted their oil. That's ridiculous. We have massive oil reserves here. There's the Bakken oil fields in the Dakotas. And I read the U.S. Geological Survey like 1990, between 95 and 99. I forget which year. But there is 300 years worth of oil in the shale fields, the Bakken oil fields up in the Dakotas, 300 years worth. We don't need oil. We don't need any oil anywhere in the world. We have everything we need right here.
Not only that, the Bakken Reserve is real. But remember, we've been talking so far about Venezuela. There will be commercial development there, I assume, but we were talking about silver and other minerals. Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, you're going to have places like Greenland, which is resource rich, right? Mm-hmm. And Trump has talked about making a deal for Greenland. Well, the United States needs it, and there may be more reasons that we need it than to just oppose this other two components of the three axes that are forming right now, the three superstates. Maybe there's something the three superstates are all working on together to make sure they can defend the entire world against.
That's I was going to propose this to you, actually, because we believe for some time, I don't know what the boss thinks about it. We believe for some time that Trump, Xi, and Putin are working together. They're creating a narrative and a stage play, a theatrical performance to lead the people psychologically, not just here, but all over the world, in this slow-moving political evolution. So there's no abrupt moves made that could cause one side or another or a group of pink-haired, bull-ring-nosed lunatics to freak out in public and start destroying shit. It has to look like a natural, global, ideological, political mindset shift in the world as we're, kind of advancing society, let's just say, for that point. How do we know that when China loaded up a bunch of assets, or I believe it was precious metals or whatever, and flew that out, Russia grabbed a chunk of whatever they did before we were there? And you're saying now that's kind of like an enemy position move. Maybe not. Maybe they're playing this out to look like there's conflict among and between the three of them. And they're taking their chunks, whatever they can get out of this, and whatever's left over. Of course, we're in the hemisphere. We can control it much better and make it, again, look like that we have the BRICS nations still going against the Rothschild banking system. And Trump appears to be helping Israel, who is owned by the Rothschilds, the land and the whole, their entire banking system, that he's working on their behalf by seizing Venezuela and their assets to prop up the U.S. dollar, which is a Rothschild construct, central bank construct. I don't believe that. I believe he is playing the game to make it look like he is working on their behalf or for their side. And that's why I said before, this was thrown into the drops. I can't see the date on this. It's not on here. But this was thrown in there in not even in a context of the conversation that was going on or those drops that were being dropped. Out of nowhere, this pops up. And when it did, we all remember we didn't know what we know today. We did not know, all of us, what we know about Israel today. When I started laying this out about the Khazarian Mafia in the summer of 2020 on this radio show, and it just continued, everybody wanted to know more and more and more. So it seemed like I was on a podcast tour for a solid year explaining the history of the Khazarian Mafia. There are things about Israel that I didn't know then, but now we are all learning. But back in that time when they dropped this, I'm like, wow, what does that mean? What's that all about, right? So there's something here, I believe, in the entire construct of this particular conflict involving these two other countries. So whatever is happening here, again, if Trump or the U.S. is working against these two BRICS nations that are working to bring down the U.S. dollar, it'd be natural that somebody on our side should be fighting to save our foreign currency, U.S. dollar, right? And so how do you position yourself for a decapitation? You got to keep them in your camp until the very last minute, until they're completely vulnerable before there's a strike. And I don't know what that economic strike or monetary strike looks like, but it makes sense to me. And it's not easy for me to make these leaps to stay in Trump's camp on these things, right? But I always pull back to this. I said this here many times. When that FBI agent infiltrated that Mongol biker gang chapter, that he infiltrated them successfully, got to the top of the leadership before they took him out. not him out. The FBI took those guys down. And I said, if you're going to survive and work your way up into their good graces and their circle of trust, everything you do, everything about you should smell like a Mongol motorcycle gang leader, right? Personally, I know they're not brothers of mine, but we come from the same world. They just happen to commit crimes like running drugs and guns that the U.S. politicians also commit, but don't go to jail for. That's the only difference in these two groups. So he successfully did it because everything he did made them believe he's one of us. That's how he survived until they could take him down. I believe Trump, if that's the issue, he's doing the same thing. All those things that make you go, wait a minute. I believe it's all stagecraft.
Can you imagine not just Trump? And I think there's disclosure in a lot of television and movies. And one show that I paid attention to was the Blacklist. And when I asked the boss about that, because Reddington's character was a naval intelligence officer, he says, yeah. He says, that's based on a real guy. And he said, can you imagine what him and guys like him have had to do to deeply infiltrate these organizations, what they have to go through, the things they're asked to do, all in the name of the long game, and they still might not survive to get to the end of it all. And I said, is that what really happened? He says, well, with this particular guy, he says, not so much. He said getting deeply involved in that whole game kind of corrupted him. But he, came back to us, and he's basically working off his karma right now. But there's definitely a lot of truth that's revealed in that particular show. And, back to, say, China, Russia, Trump, and noting that you don't have the European nations on that particular list. If you're going to team together, think of Trump's initial tour for his first term. If you're going to team together to realize what the ultimate enemy, I call it the Tower of Mordor, the all-seeing eye. And if that's the managers of the fiat currency back to the City of London and Bank of International Settlements, that is something that is so entrenched in almost every single country on the planet that to take that down has to be something done in controlled fashion without any one nation part of the alliance. And I'm sure that there are more. I'm sure that the nations are grouped. Not that I know firsthand, but I'm just speculating based on the macro of what I see. Then we have to make sure that we have access to resources. Otherwise, we will be left held with nothing, because China, India, Russia have been accumulating hard assets like precious metals for a long time, but the U.S. lagged. And what that brought me to is, we've all seen it, the video of Khazarian himself, Netanyahu, saying, we're going to take America and we're going to make it a golden calf, carve it up into pieces, and have the biggest welfare state on the planet.
Yep.
Unless America has the resources. And I want to make a key distinction as well, because I fall into this sometimes, because Israel has everything that we have. They have a deep state. They have a corrupt media, propagandists. And, they also had that darn, lethal vaccine deployed too. That killed a lot.
Every single person in Israel was forced to take the kill shot.
And, if you're thinking, well, let's hide behind calling ourselves Jewish when they're really not. They're Satan worshiper Luciferians, known by many names. Moloch, Baal. Like I said, it's been said before, the devil has 1,000 names, and they hide behind that. And one of the things I heard from the boss in the past that paired off of Edmund Bernays, who was scooped up by Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, he would say things like, to them, every dead Jew was good publicity. They don't care. They hide behind that shield.
They don't care if it's their own people. That's why Netanyahu, the Israeli soldiers were shooting their own people during the October 7 raid. The Hamas raid, funded and organized by Israel. Hamas has been funded just by Israel, has been for a long time, as is Hezbollah and the others. They fund the appearance of enemies, or they create them, fund them, because every time, like you see it, every dead Jew is good for their whole mission. They don't care about their own people because they're Khazarians.
They're fake Jews. They're not Jews. They hide behind that. They're
not
fake.
Jews. Yeah,
right.
They're not.
Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting. And one of the things we discussed actually not long before I got on the show, because I asked him, say, okay, well, what can I do about what's going on in the world? I'm not going to start my own podcast. Just what can be done to communicate and understand, at least to benefit my friends and my family around me, because you and I have talked about this. What can we do? Get people educated. I've given several people the list of books, because after you go The Rise of the Fourth Reich and you dig deeper into books that say, well, we all know about the Organic Act of 1871, okay, that made the U.S. a corporation. But did you really know that we may not have had the original Constitution properly ratified? The Vatican and the Brits were deeply entrenched and just wanted to restart commerce and slowly infiltrate our government organizations, which is what appears to be done today with our government. And then look, it was, I think it was Juan who said it first. Well, in about 15 minutes, we're going to see all this fake outrage from the politicians. Of course, because what I really hope that has been speculated on some posts is that Maduro is going to reveal what is likely a long list of U.S. politicians on the financial take. You have so many that are dual citizens. They're on the financial take. And for all the yelling back and forth that both parties do, I think one is just more sneaky than the other, but it's a uniparty that we're often dealing with very few exceptions for those that are principled and actually pro-America. What do you think?
I do. In fact, I saw this long list. Might have mentioned that on Saturday night. I can't remember. But there's this long list of all the people, all the Republicans and Democrats, primarily Democrats. There's probably, I didn't count the numbers up. It's got to be at least 60. And probably 10 are Republicans and the other 50 are Democrats who have been on to take cartel money to allow this shit to go on. And I believe that's why even Tom Massey, I mean, look, what can you say? Those who scream the loudest
Bingo.
Are the most guilty. And that's what we're going to find out. All the ones that are screaming, even on quote unquote from Trump's party, the Republican Party, folks, they're guilty as shit. They know that this information was out. They are all dead. They're Gitmo'd. They're gone. They know what's next. They know what's happening in Gitmo too. They know what's next. And again, a number of these scumbags, I believe, have already been taken care of, and they have their doppelgangers in there walking through the process, slowly showing people who they really are. And now here's what happens when you commit treason in America. And they said that the response to all of this, number one, two things that stick in my mind: they will not make a move until they can guarantee the safety of the American people. And number two, the punishment will be so definitive that nobody will ever try anything like this again on the world stage.
And I believe it all, Scott, because when it comes, when I get to the end of my day, and sometimes I get frustrated with the normal things that go about the day happening and what's going on in the world, and thinking, gosh, are we headed the right direction, or are we not? One, I need to believe in our heroes. So I'm going to have faith and I'm going to have belief in Trump and the team, because it's not just Trump. There's a crack crew of super intelligent military and intelligence officers that have been on this game for at least as long as you have, if not generations. I think they had to. I think they had to go underground after they took out Kennedy.
I heard was there were when those generals got together after they took out Kennedy, about 200 of them, and they started to discuss how do we infiltrate this thing, because it's way more powerful than they thought. They slaughtered our Camelot right in Dallas here, slaughtered them in front of the world to show them, if any of you try to go up against us, we will murder a president in front of your eyes, in front of the world. That's what you're going to get. So that's what caused them to become strategic thinkers on how to infiltrate the infiltrators. And two times in the past, I think they moved on them to try to bring them down, and they failed both times. And you know what happens when they fail? A lot of people get killed. A lot of people get eliminated that are caught in the crossfire. And then the third move they were going to make, they made sure that they had everything 100% dialed in before, Trump gets the alarm clock goes off and said, okay, it's go time now. You're going to run for president. I believe Trump's been on deck for this long before any of this ever was even a footnote of thought in anybody's mind. That's my belief. because there's too many. I won't get into the depths of it. There's too many things that would take much more of an evolution to get to where this point was in 2015, 2016, than just say, "Yep, I'm going to run and go into the the world of politics." Anyways, go ahead on the back of that.
Well, exactly what you said, and I'll go right on the back of that is think of what that man and his family has had to endure and what kind of risk they were put under. Yeah, I firmly believe they were recruited. This has been said a number of times, and then I have to think to myself, what makes the most sense? And that makes the most sense because I think JFK Sr. was a big surprise to the cabal. I thought they probably believed they had their man. Hey, here's a guy who is just the son of a whiskey runner, and we're going to keep him happy and rich and, put girls in front of him. And we don't have to worry about what he does, right? No, they were wrong. They miscalculated. JFK had love of country. Second World War and the sinking of his PT boat, that changed him. And when he countered in his various ways, one of the key things he did was issue the silver certificate, which Johnson put a stop to shortly after he was assassinated. But also before that, the speech that Kennedy gave when he was pissed that the CIA said, we got to go to war in Vietnam. And you don't have the security clearance for us to tell you. He didn't want those wars. He didn't want the wars. And it's also, not too many people know, Kennedy had ordered the purchase of over 40,000 tons of gold to make sure that the U.S. currency was surely backed on an asset. And of course, the cabal had to take him out. So I think you're right. There's a lot that had to go underground. And one of the things I remember these little nuggets, these little drops that the boss has given me. You remember, met him in 2008, 2018. I get serious about studying all this. He said, well, let me just tell you, infiltration works two ways, bud. It works two ways. And he said, I hope someday there comes a time when the world understands what the Black Robes Regiment had to go through to bring us where we are in this counter. And I put those drops together to where, and I've sent you some of the messages where he said, where he does a lot of grouching. He does a lot of bitching.
He gets pissed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he gets pissed. And he's like, I only have one person I kind of have to refer to as sir. And he says, eventually I'm just going to have to get out of this one because I'm getting too old. And, we're going to have to find some stuff to do. What we talked about today, it was related to silver and the national debt, because there's all kind of variations in speculation of what is going to happen to gold and silver. And are we going to have a U.S. Treasury note that will exist side by side with the Federal Reserve note, the fake fiat currency? Because even long ago, he said, well, how do you think they get away? The cabal get away with what they do. I said, well, when you can just make the money, meaning keystrokes.
Right.
And how many fake money printing machines did Doge discover? At least 2. I've heard it's up to 14. All they do is issue payments and throw money into the system. And when you do that, a fiat currency only has so many decades that it's going to last. And I think that was the KM's plan for sure, because Netanyahu said it. We're going to make America the biggest welfare state there is, because after being highly industrialized post Second World War, the Russian people, they lost 20 million people in the war. A lot of people forget that, how hard the Russians fought and what their sacrifice was. But their industrial capacity was destroyed.
Yep.
So the conference at Malta, Roosevelt, Stalin, Churchill, and whatever Nazis said, okay, well, we'll give you a few for Nuremberg, but the rest are going to come to the United States and take over your intelligence organizations, the Pentagon and NASA, and you guys are going to rule the world for us. And we're going to control the world with our fake fiat currency. We're going to base on oil and prop up the Saudis, and there you go. Well, that has a life cycle that appears to be ending. And this alliance of China, Russia, and Trump and the Patriot military working together, you've got to take down that fake fiat currency in order to have a more just world. But like I said, I think we were just behind on the resources. So I don't think by way of domination and acquisition that we're going to end up with other countries. I think there's going to be economic deals that are made, strong economic deals. But Venezuela was no doubt a big piece. And I think it's going to be really interesting. We're talking about silver. It's like, okay, well, I bought silver. I asked him today, what do I do? And I never tell people what to do. I said, I started to look at some silver miners. I said, there's probably going to be a time to get into them. You have some of them that have pretty depressed pricing. There's one in Nevada, Highcroft Mining. It's sitting on over 3 billion ounces of silver. That land is 3 billion ounces in the land.
Where is that?
It's in Nevada. Highcroft, Hycroft. It's in Nevada. They're not moving it right now, but it is a publicly traded company with a market cap of a mere $1 billion. And mining companies are classically companies that pay decent dividends. So I think there's going to be a time to get into it. But I've also heard too, and I know that Juan O'Savin has mentioned it on shows, that miners really don't want to get burnt again after having to stop production in the United States.
Yep.
And they don't want to get started until the price of silver is around $200 an ounce. So I asked the boss about that. He says, well, since you're looking into that miners, he says, the maneuvers with the big miners are already being made. They're already in discussions. Yes, you're right. They're going to have financing that's guaranteed. There is going to be a price differential, which is relative to the Federal Reserve note. And he said, ultimately, where he sees it going, meaning the boss, is there's going to be a revaluation of gold and consequently silver because of the national debt that we're going to find out a lot is fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving forward to what the value of the new currency is going to be. And what he said was we may see relative to Federal Reserve notes, silver go anywhere from $1,000 to potentially $3,000 an ounce by the end of 2027. And it's
2027.
What he said, 2020. I said, this year? He says,
no shit.
And I said, well, but what does that mean? He said, doesn't that mean if you have
We just lost your volume there.
All right, Scott, am I back now?
Yep, we got you.
You know what popped on my screen since this is the first time I've used this this interface was you have to agree to our terms. Yeah, okay, so I had to just click that real quick. So needless to say, I did agree. But where was I? You know, I asked the boss.
We're talking about the silver going to 1 to
3,000. I said, is that something to celebrate? Or is that something to say, what kind of world are we going to be living in when silver is that high? Are we going to need a wheelbarrow full of fiat dollars to go buy groceries? He says, well, I don't know exactly what's happening. I can only guess. I know he has been at meetings where Scott Bessant has spoken, but not necessarily participating directly in the meeting, just listening.
The boss has been?
Yeah, my pal. And he has said, well, if they're able to pull off a controlled demolition, he said, you are going to see the United States come on the other side of this and just rock. He said, we have so much and so many high technology patents, most of them the Navy actually holds. He had told me at one time when he's in a hopeful mood, and sometimes he's in grouch mood, right? He says, well, at the end of all this, which I wouldn't set a date. He said, at the end of all this, he said, you are going to watch our nation advance 300 years or more in technology over just a decade.
Wow.
And he also pointed this out too about silver. Well, who is highly involved? What one person and all of his companies are highly involved that would require a lot of silver. And what I mean by involved in the future, AI, satellites, rockets, exactly. Electric vehicles. I've always said, I think electric vehicles are going to make it, but I would never buy a lithium-ion battery vehicle. No way. That thing is a bomb. You expose it to water, it's burning. But the solid-state battery that Samsung is making, a fraction of the weight, charges in 9 minutes, 550-mile range. That has a future, and it requires about 1 kilogram of silver. And what the boss told me is he said that when Musk was brought into the fold by the Patriots, the Alliance, the White Hats, whatever you want to call them, the guys, they said, all right, are you going to help us or not? He says, well, okay, I'll help you. And the companies are definitely important for helping because did you know this little point? It only takes a little over 200 satellites to basically cover the globe if you need to, with whatever satellites do. How many satellites has Musk put into space?
10,000, 30,000?
Yeah.
And ridiculous.
And he also stated that he wants to build a facility that could make 1,000 rockets. And I don't know, is that 1,000 starships a year or 1,000 total? There's a reason. And all of that the batteries, the AI data centers, power, whatever's going to power all of that, the electric vehicles, all require silver. He says when Musk was brought into the fold, he negotiated his deals early to get acquisition to silver for these companies to survive. And something tells me this isn't all just Musk's brain. That Musk was brought into the fold. And remember how I said the Navy is one of the largest holders of high-tech patents, which I believe they hold through proxy names and proxy organizations. You don't go to Justia Patents and look up U.S. Navy. When I have friends of mine, from the neurosurgeon that's friends of our the people we know that introduced us that own a dental practice, and sometimes he'll roll his eyes and say, "Well, just for fun, go to Justia Patents and look up the name Salvatore Cesar Pais." I said, "Well, what's that all about?" I said, "Well, what does the word Salvatore mean? It means savior. Pais, especially in Portuguese, and I don't know what division or dialect of Spanish, that means nation or country, savior of the nation. And Cesar, Cezar, means leadership and power. And then just take a look at the stuff that is held under that guy's name, and it'll look like Star Trek material to you. And it's one of the things I said to the boss too. I said, you know what appears to me? Gene Roddenberry was fed information. He says, oh yeah. He said, Gene Roddenberry was fed information. So you and I have talked before. Where are we headed? What are we going to need? Silver is the unifying factor. Silver and silver miners, I think, are going to be a big part of the future, because I tell my brother, who doesn't have a lot of cash to toss around, I say, if you've got a few dollars, rather than go, spend it on a coffee a day, or maybe go out less and get yourself as few ounces as you can, start somewhere. Having more than zero is a victory, because what you don't want to do, what I don't want to do, is be holding a bunch of worthless fiat when we go through this transition, which I hope, like I said, is a slow, controlled demolition. Because if silver reaches those numbers relative to fiat, $1,000, $3,000 an ounce, what's the world going to look like? How much is my what's it going to cost me to buy a week's worth of groceries for the family? It's not going to be a few $100s. It's going to be a lot more, I imagine.
$3,000 an ounce silver, staggering. I started just basically acquiesce to the possibility because it was on the USDebtClock.org day before yesterday, that graphic showing silver 1 ounce, 1913, $2.66. Today, 2026, $1,108. So I started to actually contemplate, is that really possible? I mean, can that actually happen? Well, obviously it can. And you mentioned about the revaluation of gold as well, because with the gold we have, that basically wipes out, if you revalue it to what it should be, like 40,000 an ounce, it'd wipe out the national debt. What national debt there is? There is no national debt. I don't care what people say. There is no national debt. That is a con job for us to stand by and allow Congress to keep breaking the debt ceiling, because we have to keep the economy. It's all bullshit. I don't believe there's a national debt. Don't believe there ever was. There's nothing but massive money and resources on the planet in the first place, controlled by the Vatican and the the Khazarians. So, and a lot of that wealth is anchored in the U.S. It's on another ledger. It's on their ledger, not the ledger that they show us and they show the world. So I don't believe it is a national debt, but we'll see what happens. But I think you're right. We've brought, I don't know how many people, thousands of people to Kirk Elliott for the last 4 years, 4.5, I think, and I tell them, look, I don't care if you only have $100, $200, they'll take your call. They'll help you get into silver. Folks, again, I'm not the guy to ask. I'm only telling you what I have done. Anytime I have a little extra money, I want it out of my bank accounts. I have a good bank and a good banker. I get it out and I keep buying more silver, because I don't want, if this thing does get to the point where we have a collapse of the banking system, which is always teetering now, and it goes basically to shit, and I got this, cash in there, I'm screwed. I've been keeping enough in there to basically operate this operation, which takes a chunk of change with Cinderella and this other stuff that I do. So I keep a fair amount in there, but once it goes to a certain percentage over that, on the phone, wire transfer to Kirk, give me some more silver. And folks, his number's down here. You can see it here. You go in the description box. If this is true, And it doesn't go to 1,000 or even 3,000. It's going up. I mean, they're talking it's going to go to 200. I don't know. I don't know. It's like people that saw or heard about Bitcoin when it was 2 cents or 4 or 8. I saw it at $1,800, and I think, who in the hell would spend $1,800 on a Bitcoin? Then when it gets to 120,000, you're like, oh my God, I wish I would have bought 5 of those things, right? That's what everybody does. And again, like I said, I'm not the one to listen to, but I can tell you right now, I've been dancing, literally dancing for the last 2 months of what's happened to silver. It's staggering when I'm looking at the portfolio, like, holy Mary, Mother of God.
Well, I got to tell you, I've got a family that I need to look out for. Although I had some problems with business, I luckily got on the other side of that, and that worked out well. But what can I do for my family right now? And that's how I'm setting up my family for the future. And and I tell my brother. So with my brother and a couple other classmates I have from college that are on text threads, I'm the biggest "I told you so" smartass sometimes there is. And my brother said, "Well, I just don't have the cash to buy enough that'll make me a millionaire if it goes that high." I said, "You know what?
Make
Maybe
you
it
a
won't.
millionaire.
Yeah, maybe it won't go to 1,000. Maybe it won't go to 3,000. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe there's more silver in the ground or tailings that the miners have access to that can get silver onto the market quickly. That'll impact the price. But maybe that price range, which I've also heard Lynette Zhang echo, and that's what I'm bringing up now, because what I told my brother, I said, well, do you owe money on a car right now? He says, yeah, well, my wife and I, we each have a little bit of a payment. I said, what if you just got a few ounces? And what if it did go up enough where, okay, no, it's not going to change your life. You're not going to go buy yourself a 10,000 square foot mansion. But what if you could just convert it and pay off the cars? What if you did have enough that was more than that and was at least a down payment, if not buy a house? He rents right now. It could be that. And I said, and remember, when did I first tell you to start buying? 2018. It was less than $30 an ounce. It was in the 20s.
Well, 2018, it was in the low 20s.
In 18, I think, was the lowest price that year.
Well, 2021 was when I started working with Kirk Elliott. And it was, I think, the first time I bought was $23, and it dropped down to like $17.96. After that, it was months later. I remember, because I'm like, shit, I wish I would have, got. In fact, I didn't have any money at the time to buy more, but it was 17 something. It was 18 and 19 for a bit, went up to 20. The next time I think I did buy was $21. But yeah, I mean, we look back now and we think about, shoot, I might have missed it. It thing came up $4 or $5, and I wish I could have got it at that price. I wish I got it $4 or $5 earlier. Look what we're looking at now. It doesn't even matter. We're not even thinking about it.
I know, just stacking it. And like I told my brother and I told my friends, I said, if I'm wrong and silver doesn't rocket up to these astronomical numbers, not being an expert in the field, I can tell you that this is different from the time in 1980. There you go.
Look at that.
Going to punch through 80 again this week, I bet.
Look, just look at this. This is, if you look at this, I mean, let's look at a 24-hour period right now. 24 hours. I don't know if that's actually right. It'll tell you how much it's gone up. So in 24 hours, it's gone up $1.21. If you see the green underneath the 78.47 in the last 3 days. Okay. Last 3 days, it's gone up. See that $4, 3 days, it's gone up $4.29. Here's the last week, how much it's gone up in the last week. Actually, let's look at it last month. Just in the last month, $19.61 it's gone up. Look at the last 3 months. See, the last 3 months, it's gone up $30. $30 in 3 months. That's nearly doubling in 3 months. Here's what it's gone up over the last year. $49 an ounce in the last year, which means what? It was less than $30 an ounce a year ago. It's pushing 80.
And how many people with equities, IRAs, 401ks?
I'm glad you said that, because I have a buddy of mine. He's a really smart guy. Owns a company, and he's got, like, I don't know, probably a good 7 figures in his portfolio, because we were talking about it, and he's got it in stocks and stuff. I said, dude, I know I said this to you before, 2, 3, 4 years ago. I'm going to say it again. You don't have to listen to me, but you're crazy. Get your money out of there. you're going to lose a shit ton of it. You're going to lose a shit ton. This thing's going down. And I told him, I give him the actual number of how much my silver has gone up in 1 year. That should be enough to make anybody say, holy shit, you're kidding. I'm in. How do I get my, and I was shocked when he made the case for, whatever. And I'm just thinking, man, I've been telling some of these people, I couldn't validate it till now. I mean, I've watched it inch up, and then bang, bang, bang in the last year, working with Kirk and listening to all his shows like you have. It's here. It's happening. And it's just getting started. The cover's still on the baseball right now, but it's coming off. So how can you not keep your stuff in an IRA and 401k? I can just tell you, if it were me, I don't have one. But based on the moves I've made in the last 4 years, there's no way in hell I'd have anything in an IRA or 401k, because you can legally, lawfully move all of those retirement funds into precious metals legally. They have a whole department at Kirk's Strata. They handle the transition of that into the metals market. And I know one guy, don't know him personally. He's one from the Patriot Street Fighter Nation. Kirk told me, he called up. He was moving 10 million into silver. And that's when it was about, I think it was less than $25. He just turned 10 million into over 30, and it's going to keep going.
It's going to keep going. And, the detractors I have among my friends, because among my friends, I'm just the guy they went to school with that thinks he knows a little bit more about this topic than the rest of them, right? They kind of laugh. Mm-hmm. And one of my pals, he told me, he says, well, my portfolio manager won't let me move it. I'm like, isn't it your money? And he says, yeah. And I said, if you moved it out, and you can, like you said, you can move your funds into silver from an IRA. I said, does that mean there's less for him to manage? Oh, yeah. Well, what does he get? 2% a year of your portfolio under management? Yeah. I said, okay, think about that. I said, here's the worst case scenario. What if I'm wrong? What if silver doesn't move up from here? What if it just stayed right here or went up a few bucks? You're not going to lose the money. When you're in nothing but dots in cyberspace and the brokerage firms technically own your stocks and it's all denominated in fiat dollars, that's what's at risk. And if you only look at the consumer price index, that has gone up 25% in the last 2 years. So whatever you were buying is 25% more expensive now. And silver has gone up far more than 25%. And like you were saying, what portfolio?
150 or 168% in the last year.
Yeah. And
Imagine making an investment into the stock market.
Like your friend, I mean, that's life-changing. And, for a lot of people, and I didn't necessarily predict this show was going to turn into
silver. Yeah, me either.
The last thing the boss and I talked about, because what does he do? He looks out for my family and me, because I said, well, what can I do? You're feeding me all this information. You told me to read these books. I feel powerless other than learning. And he said, well, you got to see where the ball is going. And at times he says, I don't know who's going to prevail in all this, because he's not as hopeful as other times where he said, wait until this is all done. We're going to advance hundreds of years of technology in a decade when it's all over. But we just keep coming back to, okay, get silver. And I'm glad I have it, because if there's a severe economic collapse, we're going to get by. We're going to be able to buy groceries. If there's something different and silver really rockets up and there's opportunities to buy things that actually do produce revenue, okay, well, that's a whole another end of the spectrum. And let's say put someone like my brother in the middle, for him to be able to get out of one or more debts by having some silver now, and because he could have done, if he would have converted his entire IRA when I told him to, I said, do you know when I told you to, you'd be 4X right now? You'd be 4X. What would you be doing? He says, well, we would have moved out of cold Pennsylvania and got a house in Florida or Myrtle Beach. We would have been able to do it. Cash. I said, yeah.
And guess what? It's likely going to go to 4X again and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm overall, I got to think, well, when you and I were messaging over the week, it's like, gosh, on one hand, I've got the boss saying, hey, got Maduro. This is going to lead to a lot of exposure. Just like Juan said, look at all the congressmen, and Caesar, my pal, always starts Congress with capital C-O and N. Congress begins with C-O-N for a reason. He says, look at all the mouths coming out griping right now
Yeah.
about what's going on. He says they have no clue. He said no clue. And you think they're Americans? There's patriots. He says maybe there's some in there that are our politicians in D.C. I could probably count them on one hand. And one I remember him being particularly disappointed with. And it was during the COVID times and all the yelling that went back and forth between Rand Paul and Fauci. Yeah, he said he confronted Rand Paul and said to him directly, because Rand said, "You look troubled, sir." He says, "Yeah, I am. You know what I don't recognize? I don't recognize a single American politician as actually being pro-America and a patriot. And that includes you." And he said when his body language, Rand Paul's body language, face turned red and he looked down into the left, that was shame. He's not his father. And there's countless examples like that. And being in the medical space, all that yelling that Rand Paul did with Fauci, who is a murderous criminal, more than one time, by the way, not just COVID, but check out
HIV.
That's right. I mean, this guy, why he wasn't arrested and Rand Paul didn't call for his arrest? No, it was just a big shouting match. And none of us that subscribe to these channels, I know there's a lot of hand wringing that goes on when. And I'm just of the belief that we're headed in the right direction. There's reasons for delays. And there's two, in my personal opinion, there's two reasons, not necessarily delays, but the reasons for timing. Maybe there's three. One, you get more of the public to understand exactly what's going on and how deep this criminal syndicate goes and operates and who they have influence over. Number two, another thing is you have to mitigate problems. Back to one of the things, the nuggets the boss has dropped on me in the last 8 years is, well, my biggest fear is a sum of all fears incidents. What does that mean? And he doesn't elaborate. Some things he just won't elaborate on. And I think, well, Israel has said, we've got a Samson option. You attack us, we're launching missiles. But what if it's not just missiles? What if there are devices, just like there were in the stadium of that movie, planted all over the world in major cities, maybe only America, maybe other major cities, where it's like, oh, you want to do this? You want to make this move? You don't want to put our people in? You want to expose election fraud? Then we'll push the button. Mm-hmm. So can you imagine the sophistication, the dedication, the diligence that our patriots have to work toward?
Yeah, and
to be able to dismantle all of that threat.
Well, one of the gravest Samson options that they have is having major oil pipelines rigged to blow in the areas that they would hit the U.S. water table. That would wipe out our drinking water. It's like any other Satanist. They're playing for keeps. If they're going down, they know they're going down, but they're going to deliver one more victory to Satan, to Moloch, to Baal. The massive energy spike in Lush, negative dark energy from the death and the suffering and I'm going to say starvation, but dehydration of tens of millions of people is exactly a victory lap for these guys. And that's what they've done forever. And that's how, when you refer to sum of all fears, you remember the movie with Ben Affleck, right? Yeah. So that's what many people don't understand. Sum of all fears was exactly what was set up by Hillary Clinton. If you don't know this, folks, I know you heard me say this stuff a number of times. Selling uranium 20% of the U.S. stockpile of uranium to Vladimir Putin, our sworn enemy, so they say. And it was the State Department ran a sham operation through Canada to get 20% of our stockpile in Putin's hands, in Russia's hands, our sworn enemy. And you know who actually delivered a sample of that uranium to Moscow personally? Robert Mueller, the guy investigating Trump, FBI director, covered up 911. So what happened then was the CIA skimmed off the top of that uranium stockpile going to Putin, skimmed off the top, and sent quantities split up on 3 planes, flew those planes to Syria, Iran, and North Korea, where the clowns in America, the rogue scumbags, were creating a nuclear weapon with it. And one of those, they were going to get into the U.S., they were going to detonate it, and they were going to trace the signature of the uranium back to the Putin stockpile. Hillary Clinton was going to be president then. say this came from Putin and launch a thermonuclear strike on Moscow, which would kick off a global thermonuclear event. They expected to wipe out 2 billion people. And by 2025, here comes the kill shot. Literally, we're releasing COVID. Once Trump won, sand was thrown into gears, brought the whole thing to a screeching halt, and they had to speed up their game plan. The next option was their quote unquote COVID attack. That's what the sum of all fears is. Ben Affleck and Morgan Freeman were in that movie like 20, 25 years ago. Same concept, and that was from the Q drop. They described that that's what was set up. Uranium One was all about.
And just imagine getting the intelligence on all those machinations, number one, talk about the infiltration and the sophistication of intelligence gathering, and then the collection of minds that have to figure out how we're going to counter all of this. And then they actually do it, because right now we have relatively clean water tables. Chemtrails get involved. Right now, there's no major maneuvers that are going to be made if we're under tremendous threat of something similar, like the Samson option. In another movie, I forget what it was probably from the 80s, Operation Spoilsport. Okay, we got defeated in a nuclear exchange. And then you're right, exactly what these Satanists want. What did Aleister Crowley write in his book? I want 3 world wars. We need 3 world wars because they have to put Russia and the United States together. You really don't want these two nations that kind of think very similarly. Christian nations. You don't want to sandwich Europe in between these two guys. And they both, Russians already knew. And then the U.S. especially figure out, hey, where the real enemy is and what they're doing. So I sometimes hear on other shows, and it's funny, you have a friend and we've listened to his show, and well, when is this all going to be over? Like there's going to be some major VE or VJ day. This has been going on for decades, and mad respect and salute right now to the people in the military and intelligence agencies who have probably gone through learning and sacrifices that the public may never hear about or might not learn about for 20, 50, 60 years, and are still doing it to bring us to the point where we are today, because there's no instant, in my opinion, where there's going to be a big reveal and, okay, hey, we won, it's over, go party and celebrate in the streets. No, I think it's going to take Americans to get involved and remake our country. I think that Elon Musk, again, is going to get involved, and we're going to see his Ad Astra Academy come for a lot of people. Trump has talked about an American university. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of jobs that get displaced, but we're going to have a lot of new jobs that are created. And
well, not only that, you mentioned we got a nation to rebuild. We got a republic to rebuild, and the republic has got to be rebuilt and manned by we the people. The republic is not an outsourcing operation of our responsibilities to maintain our communities or counties, in this case, and maintain our freedom. That's not outsourced to a politician, a career politician. Look what outsourcing our responsibilities to this dynamic did. It created a comprehensive legion of criminals. They all run for political office because of the perks, because their lives get better. They're hot shots. They're separated from all of us. We basically are peasants now to their superiority complexes they have. And they get away with committing crime after. I mean, that's just like royalty. They commit crime after crime after crime. Nothing happens. But if the peasants do, they're beheaded. They're hung, whatever. And that's one thing that I've been trying to perpetuate for a few years with tactical civics, or bringing back the certified standing militias that are the enforcement side of every county's every county's grand jury. All these things are critically important. There's one question I wanted to ask you that drifted from me, so I'll weave it in here where it doesn't belong. You said the boss has been at events or an event or whatever where I've spoken publicly. Have I ever met him unknowingly? Just curious.
No. He's been at he attended events where Scott Bessant has spoken. I've sent him links to your shows that he's watched. If he's actually been to one of your live events, he hasn't told me.
Oh, okay. I thought you mentioned that, and I thought, I wonder if I ever shook hands with this guy, but I never knew who the boss. I wouldn't know it was him.
He would remain low key. Low key. He's a little shorter than me. He'd remain low key. But I can tell you this. He says, well, he'll go into his blanket statements. A lot of those podcasters out there, maybe all of them, it's just complete farce. Nobody really knows what's going on. And I said, yeah, okay, but are you telling them? Are you telling me what's going on? Do you know everything that's going on? No. I said, but what do the rest of us who are interested in saving this republic, saving this nation, and looking out for our families, what information do we have to go on? said, you gave me a list of 24 books to read, 2 different lists. The first one was 14. It took me 4 years to get through all of them. And I said, and at the end of it all, I'm still blown away, right? And still wondering, well, what am I going to do about it? Other than be a part like you are. And I've told you before, I said, man, if you and your audience, which is sizable, if you're able to open minds and get people to peer in, because I asked him one day, I said, why do you spend all this time educating me? You said you couldn't recruit me. He could send me to somewhere and I could get screened. And I'm not a door kicker. I'm not trained like our guys are that do the stuff. And he said, no. He says, I just want you to learn. I'm like, why do you spend so much time telling me? He says, well, I've got about 20 like you. And he said, what? I said, yeah. He says, I talk to you the most. He said, but I got about 20 people I give information to just to open their minds, including, his own kids. Mm-hmm. And he said, and how many do you have? I said, well, I probably got at least 10 that have opened their minds and have said, I'm going to start looking into this. And then they go, what do? I give them a list of some of the books. I tell them about my favorite shows like yours. I've told them about the series, the Fall of the Cabal series. If you really want to understand where we are, pick a spot and educate yourself. I can tell you, at our household, there's no weekend sports games watching. There's very few movies that are watched. I have shared with you that one of the perks the boss told me he's gotten is, when we're traveling across the world on our planes that we use that go really fast and fly really high, one of the few perks we get is we get to see movies that are released. We get to see movies before they're released to the public. And he has told me at different times, he says, I want you to go watch the movie Outside the Wire. So Outside the Wire, the protagonist was Anthony Mackie. And what was one of the themes in Outside the Wire? The military technology with the robots, and maybe even that they have. And he says, we can only show what we've got once in a while. He says, yes, you've heard rumors that we're decades ahead of what would be our so-called adversaries. He says, we are. But we can only pull out what we've got. We send them in particular directions and we use particular equipment that might be 20, 30 years behind our most advanced. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things we don't want to do is reveal what we've really got. He said, and it's on the heels of comments like that where he goes, the light is going to win. We are going to win. But the question is, how much cost? And I think about all of that to encapsulate in, okay, well, we came on board together tonight to talk about, okay, Venezuela and what does this mean? And I think 2026, here's my summary of opinion as we get to the end here. 2026, we're going to see some big maneuvers. I mean, Trump released the video, Unleash Hell, the opening battle scene from Gladiator. Yeah, truthful, right there. And it's not just going to be Venezuela, because now you have other nations.
I'll quote Gerard Butler when he looks up at him and he says, I'm going to bring the whole thing down. I'm going to bring the whole fucking corrupt temple right down on your heads.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's coming. This is a big moment, a big year, and we're coming out of the, it's not lost on me, the astrology of coming out of the winter solstice and more light being added every day. And what the boss said too is it's not just Venezuela. He said any narco trafficking nation is on notice right now. He said, you don't think Claudia Sheinbaum is shaking in her boots? Look at all the nations like Colombia. He says Colombia is still shipping mounds and mounds of cocaine into the United States. You've also got Peru involved. He said, so just wait. He says, but this was a big move, and positioning the assets that we have in the Caribbean right now, he says, that's our net. He says, there's not a thing we didn't know before. He said, but now this is a game changer.
Think of the proposition of these countries. You get to the right leader, even if they're narco terrorists, basically, but they have some strong controls that could cause us to shed a lot of blood. Once again, Trump's a deal maker. How'd you like to keep your position, your post, and be part of a hemispheric superpower of the Americas? How about we do this? Stop this bullshit. Let's look at your natural resource and let's create an American market, North America, South, the whole American hemisphere, and we together become a massive superpower economically. Can you imagine what that would look like? It would be untouchable.
It'd be unreal. And I don't have direct knowledge. The boss didn't tell me directly, but just thinking Claudia Sheinbaum, for example, over 30 people were assassinated running that were interested in running for the presidency of Mexico before she came into power. One time he told me, he says, "You don't think she's looking over her shoulder? Do you think she wants to do exactly everything that she wants to do for these drug cartels, or do you think she's pressured, coerced, and in fear of doing so?" He says, "Yeah, my money is on the latter. Because you cross these people," he says, "it's not just you. It's your family. It's your extended family. And this mafia makes it clear." And back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, the illicit way that they make and move money and destroy nations is the three primary illicit commodities that are trafficked: the guns, the drugs, and the human element. And what's our job, our U.S. military's job right now? Take control of that in our hemisphere, and that net has been cast. So because of that phrasing, we have the net over this right now. I look for more activity in 2026, and then we're seeing what with the price of silver, because it's different today. When I was thinking back to my friends, when I said, well, in 1980, the Hunt brothers jacked up the price, and look, it just fell back down. Why should I get in? It's not the Hunt brothers buying today. The Hunt brothers were the only ones buying in 1980. It's Tesla, it's Nvidia, it's all the AI companies, Samsung, the Navy, the list of other. It's sovereign wealth funds, the nations that are in the know, that understand that we're probably going to go to a worldwide asset-backed currency. Well, said it's a little bit different today than it is in 1980, and the paper game is only going to last so long. And I've heard it on podcasts. Just look at this: the break between the Shanghai price and the LBMA price. And what does it cost to go buy an ounce right now? Okay, I'll tell you. There's a couple websites I looked. If I'm going to go buy a silver eagle on a website that I've used in the past, I bet you it's going to be it's $88.
No shit.
$88. I've used a few different websites, but the ask price, okay, let me orient it properly. You see that? 88?
Yeah. $88. Yeah.
That's what it would cost you right now to go buy a silver eagle, not the spot price of 70 something. $88 is what it's going to cost you. So as this disparity, in my opinion, and not being an expert, I know Kirk's an expert, as this disparity grows between what it actually costs to buy an ounce and what the spot price is, we're going to see what a fraud the COMEX and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange really are. And when that tower falls, well, maybe that's going to launch silver another big step.
Well, it's right now trading at $400 an ounce in India, $400 an ounce, and that's been that way for probably over a month.
Sovereign wealth fund. They're accumulating for sovereign wealth fund.
Sovereign wealth fund, yeah. Well, at the end of the day, I think, like you and I talked about, I think this Venezuela move there's a lot more to it because everything is much more complex than we can imagine, more convoluted. I don't think it's a single strategy approach. I think it's a multi-strategy approach sequentially to get things to unlock and then unfold in a sequence that allows, as you and I talked about, to gain massive ground with the least amount of disruption or deaths or anything, economic turmoil, systemically and systematically breaking this thing down. And then as they're breaking the material they're bringing down, they're using that to construct what has to replace it. You can't do this, boom, crash it and build something else because too many people would die. I mean, people starve. It's got to be this. And I think they've been using these instruments in their own way to take the demolition material and construct, however you want to see that metaphorically, construct a system that basically slides into place, so to speak. And I think Venezuela's got a lot more to do with that than we think. And I was sort of surprised today. I saw a number of these videos with Maduro. There is a video of Maduro basically calling out Israel. I bet it was a decade and a half ago. I don't remember exactly when. Chavez might have still been alive, but I'm thinking that's Maduro. He has like a round head. This Maduro's got a long head about this high, about that thin. I'm like, holy shit. Is that a cutout? Is that a puppet? Is that an actor playing that role? You know, we saw him in 4 different types of clothing from the time they picked him up till the time they delivered him to New York. Like, what's that about? They show him walking through the hall in English, saying, talking. He's like, yeah, Happy New Year. After he's captured, like, what's going on really?
Is that a guy who made a deal? I asked the boss that. He said, of course he made a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Maybe
it's
maybe he was put in there to make that deal a long time ago. That's what I don't know.
yeah, and his extraction had to be done a certain way for appearances. Because the rumor that I heard is that he wasn't guarded by Venezuelan forces; he was guarded by Cuban forces. And
that's a major force running that place is Cuba. It isn't. Yeah. It isn't Venezuela.
And the boss said too. I said, "Well, was there a firefight to get him out?" He says, "I don't know about that." He said, "Let me challenge that notion." He said, "That's certainly not what I heard." He said, "But you did have at least one small group of the Bolivarian army take a shot at one of our helicopters." And he said,
"Bad move."
Yeah, bad move. He said, "No Americans were harmed. No equipment was damaged." And he says, "But it was more than just a couple helicopters." He said, "to protect the entire operation," which that just tells you 2 aircraft carriers loaded with Chinooks. How important was this operation? And here we are kicking off 2026 after the release of the video of what's his name, Russell Crowe as General Maximus saying, "Okay, at my signal, unleash hell." Yeah, that's pretty convincing to me. Patriots are in control. This has long been planned out and gamed out. And you've heard Juan say, "Yeah, we gamed this out on supercomputers and AI." Well, I asked the boss about that. I've taken a couple AI courses just to start learning it. But how long has AI been around for us? Just a few years? Boss told me he saw his first AI system in 1988. No. He has often said to me, whenever you see something that makes the public domain, he said, you can only imagine what the military has. Mm-hmm. And he says, we have some of the smartest, if not the smartest people in our think tanks on the planet. He said, and he's a brilliant guy, couple degrees. And he says, you know what? When they are not so annoyed by my questioning, these brainiacs that we have, he says, they'll talk to me like I'm a reasonably smart 5th grader to bring me along. And that's how I feel around them. And he says, the brain trust that we've been able to accumulate and prosecute all this, he says, it's just something that's hard to appreciate. And just like you and I said, I hear it on so many other podcasts. When is it going to be over? When are we going to have this big reveal? What is it? This is a decades-long plan with smart people in control. And like you pointed out, there's a certain way it has to be done to minimize casualties, economic disruption, starvation, disruption of resources, utilities, not just in this country, but in many countries. And you have to mitigate the threats that are planted there just for somebody to go ahead and push a button and say, okay, it looks like you're winning. We're going to be spoiled sport and Samson option you right now. Can you imagine the depths and the level of dedication and intelligence gathering? And, I'm sure that there are hundreds and hundreds of special force operators that have pulled off missions you and I may never hear about. Hats off, salute to all of them.
Yeah. And I say that here often, folks. You got to remember, no amount of bitching can replace the dynamic that exists in military families where these special operators are being killed around the world every day, and they're not going home to their wife and kids. And yet people sit here and bitch, this is bullshit. This should be over. I'm just, every day I hear this, I'm shaking my head like, well, if you want it to be over, why don't you enlist? Why don't you see if you can get into some spec ops team, which is like, be highly unusual if you could, if you're somebody who sits around bitches. But if you want it to happen faster, what are you doing to make this happen faster? At the end of the day, in my opinion, this is a year we see a lot of stuff emerging. I don't really worry about the arrests not being made yet. Again, once people come out and learn that, if they do learn, if they ever let them learn, a number of us are supposed to learn, you, myself, and others who I guess maybe have some type of perspective, accurate perspective on what's happening, that we get this information to know. But we'll be the ones that know that these number of these guys have been executed. They've been taken off the playing field years ago, and they've been replaced. Look, you can't look at Vladimir Putin and say that's him. I mean, come on, his face is completely different. When he was much younger, he has no wrinkles. All these guys are masked up. They don't. JD Vance doesn't have a wrinkle. I mean, you look close around the eyes. I'm like, this dude's wearing a mask. That's not the real JD Vance. Whoever JD Vance really is. That's the stuff that would send people, into a state of psychological chaos. Mm-hmm. If that was mass revealed, those kind of things that you and I can see. That's why they keep saying, folks, you're watching a movie. Enjoy the show. That came right from military intelligence. You're watching a movie. Enjoy the show. The objective isn't just to win the war. It's not about just winning the war. It's how you win it. because one dynamic on this planet that must happen for a number of reasons, none less important than the spiritual advancement of the human species, is that the Great Awakening has to touch as many souls as possible. Because if not, there's a DNA shift with the revelation of this kind of knowledge. Especially when it's traumatic, there's a DNA shift. That DNA is passed on generation to generation to generation. Not to mention the stories and what we pass on to these future generations. If this is done right, if there's a mass global awakening and a mass revolt against the discovery of what this planet is, what it runs on, who runs it, the depravity that the price is being extracted from the human species for it, keep these people in money and power, it would be so shocking and traumatic. It shocks us to the core, and that vibration carries into eternity, that this will never be forgotten. If they wipe out all the players on the field, they're the bad guys. There will be a new group of bad guys come up, be born, whatever, will end up in the same place again. Why? We did not have the transformational or transcendent shift that makes us say, first of all, we go into a vibration where none of that shit's ever possible. That frequency cannot operate in a higher, in the fifth dimension or the fourth density, whatever you want to call it. It can't survive it. It can't be there. So this is about getting the planet, as the planet's already transitioned into a 5D planet. It's getting the human species to move into that vibration too. We don't have to worry about combating this evil. It can't get near that density. It can't get near that vibration because it's instantly just demolecularized. It's demolished. That's what they're trying to accomplish here. It's not just winning victory, kinetically, economic, or otherwise. It's the spiritual transcendence that is critical to the operation more than anything else. It has to affect the human species, or I say the spiritual realm of the human species, to advance us. Because if it doesn't, we're going, well, first of all, we're not going to end up back where we were. We're going into the pits of hell and never coming out of it. I mean, that's a simple fact.
And people that are so intelligent and follow not just operational details of what has to occur in the world, in my opinion, you can do things like follow solar cycles, long solar cycles, and look at when we had periods of massive innovation, like the Renaissance, like the American Revolution. We are in one of those solar cycles right now. And then there's long ones too that are 26,000 year long, where we're getting out of a place where we have lack of energy, low energy, or negative energy coming from galactic center or the sun. And we're in a period now where that's coming up. And yes, at the same time, we're spreading and sharing this information on shows like yours. The energy is coming in to open the mind, make people receptive to it. That's what we're seeing. Yeah, that's part of the goal. And I've talked about this with you. Say, Scott, this is part of your objectives. I know you've taken it to heart lifelong. I've thanked you for it. And to just continue to bring this information to people, because your role is tireless in this whole game, what you have to do, because without it, just like, my pal telling me, well, you're one of 20 that I have. Okay, well, look at the size of your audience. And it might only be a small percentage of the population of the country or the world, for that matter, but every little bit counts, because as the boss has pointed out to me, the American Revolution kicked off with a mere 2% of the continental population getting involved. Mm-hmm. 2%. But as the war lagged on, it was a lot of women that paired up with real badasses, the real men that wanted to be rebels, the younger rebels that were part of Washington's army that stayed because they were, mavericks in their family, and they were outcasts. And when those women paired up with those guys, the real badasses, eventually it took 20% of the continental population to counter the Brits. And that was a big deal. So, I mean, did we have our January? In January, did we have with this maneuver? Was this a crossing of the Delaware, figuratively speaking? And, with the right timing in a number of ways, like you said, this spiritual awakening that's driven by information, it's driven by a conscious ascension of people to want to know more, and also driven by the solar cycles. I mean, gosh, sometimes when I look up here where I live and I see all those chemtrails in the skies, is that what they're trying to do? Is that what they're trying to do, is block the sun rays and the signals, the energies coming in? Maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. I don't think so. I don't think there's any stopping it, because, you've seen the phrase, and I'm not in and on, but nothing can stop what is coming. I think you're a big part of it, Scott, and I hope this was useful tonight for your audience.
Yeah, very much so. And personal shout out to the boss for feeding this information over this way for the last couple of years. It never goes unnoticed. And I appreciate everything you've done. This man has kept me healthy over a couple of years at his own expense. So big shout out to Robert there for having my back in every way possible. It's just, I'm blessed to call you a friend. Glad that we got a chance to become mates in this battle. You behind the scenes, feeding me the ammunition, making me look good, of course. But I always tell the people the truth. Look, it ain't me. It's these other guys. I just repeat what they're saying. But thanks so much, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, that is one of our top intel sources here at Patriot Street Fighter, Robert. And I appreciate everything you're doing, buddy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight, that is a wrap. And I will say on behalf of Tomahawk, myself, and Robert, Patriot Street Fighter out.
Good night, all.